Anytime we talk about people that are in crisis, we need to recognize that there's a continuum that happens to people as the crisis unfolds, if you will. And that may start out with anxiety, just being anxious. We're all anxious about different things, anxious about going to the dentist or the doctor. Maybe you got anxious about having to come here today and sit through this presentation. Who knows? But we all experience anxiety really probably on a daily basis about one thing or another. The next is high anxiety, and high anxiety is starts to impact your world, starts to impact the decisions you make. Some people's anxiety gets to the level that they can't go out in public or do the normal things that everybody does, and that's debilitating in itself. The next step is agitation. We all get agitated. You get agitated that our latte wasn't hot enough, or that it was the wrong flavor, or that somebody cut us off on the way to work this morning in our cars. That's where we just kind of get upset with the other person. Maybe we're yelling and screaming in our car or in our brain and that sort of thing. So we get agitated. But when we can't handle the agitation anymore, that's when aggression leaks out. And aggression is the physical violence towards somebody else generally. So let me give you an example of how that works. What you don't realize is Jacob and I, we're actually neighbors, and we live next door to each other. We got a fence between us, so we're polite neighbors. But during the summer, we'll sometimes have adult beverages out in the backyard, hanging out, talking about things. The other day, Jacob came to me and said, "Hey, you know what we should do is take the families and go up to Seattle, and we'll just make it a day trip. We'll go up there and we'll go to that place where they throw the fish, and we could ride the ferry, maybe go to that first Starbucks that was ever there and buy that $9 cup of coffee. We can do all that stuff. Oh, and then we can cap the day off with a trip up to the top of the Space Needle and look out over the Emerald City. Won't that be awesome?" Like, yeah, that'll be great. We'll take the kids. Everybody's going to have a great time. But what Jacob doesn't know is I don't like heights. So the idea of going up into the top of the Space Needle scares me. But I'm going to be a superhero for my kids, right? I don't want my kids to see me scared or agitated, have a little anxiety over things. So I'm going to work through it. So we go up to Seattle, and it's not as we quite anticipated. It's maybe got some homeless people all over the place, and but we did see the fish. They were throwing the fish from one to another. We had that $9 cup of Starbucks. We watched the ferries, and now it's time for the Space Needle. So we get to the Space Needle. We're standing at the bottom looking up. I'm like, wow, that's really high. That's really, really high. But I'm going to do it for my kids, right? So I got a little anxiety going up. We get in the elevator and we go up, and you ever have that little elevator bump, the little speed bumps, you're going up and it all of a sudden jerks like that? Now my anxiety is up. I've got high anxiety now. And so we get to the top and everybody's looking over the rail except for me. I'm standing back holding on to the building far back as I can get. And all of a sudden, Jacob looks over and he sees me and he goes, that's not right. And he comes over and starts talking with me. So we're chatting it up. I go, "Jacob, look, I don't like heights. I'm scared to death over here, but I don't want my kids to see it. That's why I'm the way I am, because I got that high anxiety going on." And then all of a sudden, Jacob goes, "Yeah, I understand, but you probably don't need to worry about it because we live on this fault line, and any minute we can have this huge earthquake, and this thing's going to come tumbling down into the water anyway. So what's there to worry about?" And I've got aggression. Now I am just to the point I can't handle it anymore. And all of a sudden, I tell Jacob, "No, stop. You got to stop." He goes, "Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. That was bad on my part. Besides, this thing's been up here since the 60s. The salt water should have rusted away all the foundation and stuff. We should come tumbling over any minute. And I can't handle it anymore. So what do? I act out. And boom, that's where the aggression comes, and the violence. And you can see how that continuum kind of plays out in real life. We've been talking about how to recognize situations in people who may be in crisis, who may be on the edge of committing some sort of violence. But let's say we've missed the signs. What do we do then? We're at work, and all of a sudden we find out that there's something really bad happening in the shipping department or the accounting department or whatever it is. Well, let me ask you this question. What's the best defense in the entire world? Is it karate? Is it pulse plasma rifle in the 40-watt range? Or maybe a samurai sword. What's the best defense? Well, the best defense is just don't be there, right? If we're going to have a fight between two people and one doesn't show up, nobody gets hurt. So if you find yourself in a situation, whether it's at a mall or your workplace or a restaurant, that bad things start happening, leave. Your first option and your best option always is to run away from a scene. And if you start hearing gunshots or people screaming, remember, run away from it. Leave all your stuff behind. We'll come back. You can get your stuff later. Don't go back for your lunch or your briefcase or any of that. Get out of there. Encourage other people to go with you. You can't force another person to follow you unless they're a child and you have control over them, because they call that kidnapping, right? We can't kidnap people to keep them safe, unfortunately, or fortunately. So encourage people to come with you. Get to a safe spot. Keep people from going back in if you can. And if you get the chance, call 911 and tell them what you know.